Hey guys, world first PoE hands-free gamer here today, and I want to discuss Skin of the Loyal and Skin of the Lords, these Foulbourn mods, because I think they're deceptively powerful, and there's really strong things you can do to build around them. But first, I want to get out of the way. I am basically no longer able to play the PoE League. I fucked up my hands 3 weeks ago playing Tornado Shot Locust Mines, and I'm probably never going to upload that video now, just out of spite, because it ruined this league for me. But what I can do is maybe kind of not the worst case, because I get to just theorycraft more, because I can continue to do that, and that's kind of my favorite thing to do in PoE anyway. But I can pretty much no longer play the league. Maybe later that'll get better. But for now, I can just theorycraft. So sorry if these videos are gonna be a little sloppy. It takes me a little bit longer to navigate, understandably. But I can still come up with ideas and share ideas with you guys. But everything is going to be even more bait than average, just because I can't actually test anything. So this is all just theory. But hopefully they'll get some ideas flowing. So why is this mod actually powerful? I think the most obvious one right off the cuff is Enemy's Embrace. Enemy's Embrace, worth building around in the sense that if you can theoretically get enough fire resistance, you get 200 fire pen, which is a Doryani's prototype, which is a shit ton of damage, right? Everybody knows this. But with that 65% reduced fire res roll at the max value on Enemy's Embrace, this is a multiplier to your fire resistance above 0 and the opposite under 0. But point being, if you need around 830 positive fire res before you put this ring on if you want to get the 200 fire pen. Nobody's actually doing that in current game, like outside of like legacy fire res gear. So you're going to settle for like much lower amounts, like 600 fire pen, 100 fire pen, or something like that. But you still have to build around it quite a bit, because this penalty is very, very, very steep. Now, this mod is also a multiplier to your fire res above 0 and opposite under 0. But point being, it's additive with this mod, so it'll multiply your mana instead of being by 0.35 with this. With this on, it's going to multiply your fire res above 0 times 0.85. That means that you only need about 400 and like just under 450 fire res, positive fire res when you put this ring on to get the 200 fire pen. That's a pretty achievable amount. A lot of builds could actually get positive 450 fire res with, like, you obviously are going to have to build around that, but 200 fire pen is nothing to sneeze at. That is, again, a Doryani's prototype worth of damage without having to put minus lightning res in your gear, instead positive resistance gear, which is a lot easier to come by, and you aren't going to just randomly fall over to things like lightning dots. So something to definitely build around, in my opinion. The other ones I'm going to go over before we go into like a deep dive on, we're going to mostly do a deep dive on Enemy's Embrace, but I do want to touch on these that I probably won't discuss in this video just because I couldn't find anything I was happy with. So Choir of the Storm, this one's very strong too. Mana is increased by overcapped lightning res, similar to the ring with pen. This one is going to scale your increased max mana off of lightning mods. Now, I couldn't find a build I was happy with this, but I was able to make like a level 60 character that's like built around this with like 20k mana without an insane amount of trouble, I guess, honestly. But that's still like, I don't know what you do with that, because it's like I'm generally not like a Captain Lance style, like min max, like how do I build something that's like this high investment that like with a billion hit pool, maybe like Baldo Farmer kind of thing. But the point being is this lets you turn all of your lightning res suffixes into increased mana, which gives you a really weird way to scale stuff. Like, for example, a Cobalt Jewel can just have like 10% increased mana as implicit, right? Or as a prefix. But if you have that same Cobalt Jewel that also has a 15% lightning res suffix and then 12% fire and lightning res, you will then be getting what is that, like 13 lightning res, or 13 increased mana out of your jewels as suffix as well, which is actually bigger than the prefix. So you get over double your mana potentially on your jewels, so you can stack an insane amount of like increased mana sources like that. And you can even do weird things like small cluster jewels that have like the lightning res cluster jewels that you never use. You can get increased effect lightning res small clusters with like flat mana as prefix, increased effect, etc. And then you just get a double up there as well, as opposed to using like mana clusters. And you get to use things like the Trader, which like Topaz Flask, Business Flask, all this stuff, to weirdly scale your mana and just get like this really, really big pool. Yeah, like I said, I couldn't find anything that was super satisfying with this. Like, I could get giant mana pool, but I couldn't figure out how to actually use that in a functioning build. So that one's going to require a little bit more work, or someone who's like more into that big min maxing kind of like builds, like big mana, big pharma, kind of shit. The other one, less probably build around. I don't know how to use this one as much, but Formless Flame, if you are incidentally scaling a bunch of fire res, either through Enemy's Embrace or picking it up as like fire and lightning res suffixes on when you're scaling the other one off mana, I could see doing something with this, or maybe with Armor Stacker. But the problem with that is like this whole thing is about using the chest, and it's going to be really hard to give up your chest and Armor Stacker to do this. You could do the Prosperos thing with like a really fat armor shield maybe, but I'm still not sure if that actually pans out. It's still probably going to be less armor, but I'm not really super familiar with this archetype. That's another, like these other two items I'm going to build around less, just because they are builds that cost lots of money, and I don't do those. So Yeah, so I'll let someone else mess around with those if that's something you could potentially do. But this one could be incidentally scaled on either Enmity's builds or the other mana one, or by itself with Armor Tracker. Maybe some combination, it's unclear. But I'm gonna get back to Enmity's Embrace and just kind of like do a deep dive on a build I made around it just to, as like a proof of concept. When I say proof of concept, I have not played it because I literally can't. But I just wanted to make some discussions about the build because I think there's some cool stuff in there. I saw people creating 10 div Uber Bosser builds, and I thought, oh man, that's a really good way to showcase the power of this Enmity's Embrace thing that I wanted to work on. So I threw this together today, and as you can see, it's a fuck ton of damage. And this build is well under 10 div. I assume you could get it probably for like around 5. But if you look at here, our Pinnacle DPS is about 40 million Pinnacle DPS, which is the life total of Eater of Girls and Searing Exarch. So shit ton of damage. I can go over the gear and how we're getting so much damage, like all the multipliers and all that stuff. So high level, this is a General's Cry Blade Flurry character built around Wilma's Requital, a video I made last league abusing the fact that you can get Coiling Whisper with Wilma's because the clones are technically not you, they are clones, so Ancestral Bond does not harm you off of Wilma's, right? So you just get the 225% attack speed from Coiling Whisper from Soul Eater, and then you get the 225% attack speed already. So you get 450% attack speed with Coiling Whisper in that setup. Now, I was initially building around that on this character, but it seemed like it was going to be a little clunky, and there's a really good new Foulbourn unique that works on this kind of archetype as well, and that is Foulbourn Moku's Embrace. So Moku's Embrace at max attack speed and cast speed is 40% attack speed, 40% cast speed, catalyzed up to 48, both if you get a perfect one. I went budget here because this is a budget build, and I catalyzed them. So we're getting about 90% attack speed out of both of these, and they have this really nice soft synergy with 50% chance to be ignited with both of these on with Enmity's Embrace. That makes it so anytime we use a skill, there's a 50% chance to be ignited, which will just enable the self-ignite part of this because you take damage when you use this. So if you're shield charging, frostbling, or whatever, this is always going to be up, right? So you don't have to actually press any buttons or do any weird Forbidden Rite, self-damage kind of stuff. Just a super budget yoke, 8% damage taken. March of Legion for an anger in there. You could technically not do that, but I think it's used 20% more damage. It is a button, so consider maybe not using it. Dexing in here just to fix our stats because we're in a pure strength part of the tree. And then obviously the Skin of the Loyal. The colors on this are incorrect. I just realized that. You basically need General's Cry, Auto Exertion, Immolate, Blade Flurry, and then the rest are complete flex slots. It doesn't actually matter. You can use things like critical damage, element damage with attacks, infused channeling, close combat if using a sword. You have plenty of other links like Conk Effect, but I find that one a little annoying when bossing just because the clones don't have the biggest AoE and we're not scaling AoE. But yeah, point being, and then Dawnbreaker just to get an easy block cap and some fizz mitigation. I don't know if this is the direction I actually want to take. And Claw I was using the literal worst dog shit Paradoxica I could find on the trade site, which was 1 div. There's no useful mods for us. The most useful mods, honestly, the fucking dexterity on it. But point being, this was a div where I was like, oh, you just use a claw with double the attack speed of that, and it's pretty much the same thing, and you get it way cheaper. So I literally bought this claw for 6C, craft hits can't be evaded on it, and done. You just want attack speed, crit chance, T1 to T2 flat fire, and hits can't be evaded, crafted on, then you're done. Now, the nice thing about using a sword is you do get to use close combat, so it frees up the colors you can get on your body armor more. But they eat into our budget quite a bit, where this pretty much costs nothing budget-wise. The other stuff is, I should just go over the flasks. Ruby Flask to get a ton of damage because it gets us over here. You could technically get enough fire, we're not that far enough off fire res that you actually need this. You could technically not use a Ruby Flask and just get the fire res elsewhere, but this just seemed comfy. And Diamond Flask, obviously decent damage. That's why I'm using the Trader, just because mostly my hands hurt. And this just, I don't want to have to press my flask. We don't really get much out of the Trader at all. If anything, it's probably honestly not worth doing, but I don't want to have to press buttons. So, because this is all we're doing. We don't really get that much out of this Prismatic Tincture because we have so much pen already. And the other mods don't really matter. We already have so much multi, so that suffix doesn't matter. Attack speed doesn't matter because we get so much out of Wilma's. So it's there's really not that great tinctures for us. You could use a Bottle of Faith here or something more expensive and easier that you don't have to actually press another button. But again, this is a budget build, so buttons for power, etc. Okay, character-wise, a tree, nothing crazy, just really cheap cluster jewels. These were both 30C. I just wanted one that had a little bit of block on the travel, honestly, but it doesn't really matter. And then I would have a Mob Mentality plus Haunting Shout here. Or was it a Warning Call, the one that gives you Onslaught, because Onslaught's a decent amount of damage because it's 40% attack speed because Wilma converts both. But that was too expensive. I think it was 80C. This one was 6, or something like that. So just Proactor, because we are always going to taunt things from General's Cry. War Cry is always going to taunt stuff. And then this is going to make it so you get all of your charges because we have Chieftain, which gives Warcries at max power, so it's always going to cap this eventually, and you're just going to get your charges over time. And this is something that I don't see a lot of people use on builds like this, but it's just generically strong. If you look at these exert attacks deal increased damage, so if you're playing a build that's always exerting attacks, which General's Cry is always an exerted attack, 25% increased effect on that is just 25% increased damage per point, which is actually an incredible rate at any point in the tree. That's like way better than anywhere else. Like usually people take the Fire Mastery for like 4 points, where they throw away the first 3 points for 100% increased damage, which is exactly 25% increased damage per point, just to showcase why that is a strong thing to do. And you can use it to like get like some like resistances and like stat fixes. It's like pretty easy to make like a really cheap one of these, or buy one that's worth basically nothing. Now, look at our jewels. These are also really cheap. I actually think I even have my, yeah, I have my jewel search in here. That was because these are all like 5 to 15C depending on which ones you get. You don't need a double damage mod, but you really just want like a double multi mod and then a fire res, because again, fire res, if you just incidentally pick up fire res on random things, you will just slowly get your fucking Doryani's prototype out of your chest, which is what we're trying to do here. So all of our jewels are just generic like crit multi and like fire res mods, because these are literally directly turning into damage, and that is the strength of this. Is like we're just turning suffixes that don't matter into damage. And I want to say that's honestly most of like the decision points I have made here. It's just like, you know, more cheapest possible cluster jewels. We do have this mod doesn't matter. It's just anything alongside Onslaught. You could get this with literally anything else. Probably if you're using a claw, you probably honestly want to get this with the double damage mod with it. I didn't see if that was more expensive. I just literally went for the cheapest humanly possible stuff to keep the budget like as low as possible. So like, you know, taking these life nodes are really fantastic because they have fire res here. You could have a Red Covenant here or Red Nightmare, and then convert these strength nodes to fire res, get a shit ton of increased life out of this section of the tree. But that is way outside our budget because fire res tattoos are like 100 chaos, so can't use those unfortunately. One thing that's really awkward about this setup is like where the trader is not necessary, but I'm mostly using it because like my hand's fucked. Is because here like I actually really want the stun here. Like, because we have like a low life total, you don't want to get stunned out of anything. You're Cyclone and Castful Channeling, so it doesn't really matter if you get stunned out of it, because you just need the Desecrate. You just need a Desecrate down, so you don't need to constantly be attacking. But I would like to have Stun Avoidance if I could, and that's why I actually have Stun Avoidance casted on my Flask. And instead of using a Diamond Flask with increased crit chance, which would be strictly more damage, I am using Stun here to just like get the rest of it. And that's why I'm throwing away an entire jewel socket to get the rest of it here as well. It just sounded kind of comfy. But yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much it outside of going Dawnbreaker, which I don't know if it makes sense to even go defensive on this at all. If you're uber bossing, you're not going to need like this block cap at all, because like a lot of stuff's still going to kill you through this anyway. The reason I went block cap on this is because initially what I was planning on using it for is to just Abomination Rush, and I wanted to be able to like shield charge through stuff without just like constantly getting deleted. I wanted to be able to like to avoid, you know, some form of damage avoidance or whatever. But that's the part that I'm the least convinced of like actually wasting, because I waste so many points on going block like this, right? But I don't know if you actually gain enough to actually do this. And if your damage is good enough, you could technically like drop the yoke for Foulbourn Ashes, which this is incredible on this too. It actually frees up a button, so you don't have to press Call to the Pyre on your Runegraft. But you could change that, and as you see, you lose quite a bit of damage, but I don't necessarily know that matters. It's kind of up to you, because you could always make this a little bit beefier. A lot of the decision points I made are just because of how budget it is. So you could always do more stuff like that. And like obviously, I can't show it now because I don't have accuracy anymore because his can't be evaded. But like a good Paradox gun, this is going to be significantly more damage. Probably like 30% more damage than just like a shit claw like this. But again, you don't need more damage. You're literally damage capped on Pinnacles. So I think I mean, like, I personally would probably not be using this character to actually do anything. Like, literally, the intent of like uber bossers like this is you go into the arena and then delete the boss and then leave. Just make it as fast as humanly possible with no hiccups, and that's what this is. And I think this is one of the lower button ones, which is kind of sick. So it seems like it should theoretically be relatively comfy. I didn't go over it, but I guess it was kind of obvious. I'm not using a belt so that we can get a third ring slot with. Yeah, so we give up belts to do this. I could also see an argument for giving up flasks to do it as well if you want your belt back, because again, we don't really need that much from the flask anyway. But it's nice to get just the resistance. Like, one thing that you can consider doing on a build like this that's like really, really fucking weird is that this seems like unintuitive, but as opposed to like having like a DPS jewel here, if you're really under fire res somewhere else, I was literally using clusters like this. Because if you'll see here, this is a shit ton of resistance. Like 250, that's like 50 less fire res I need somewhere else. So that could potentially free up something as well. So it's just something to keep in mind that like you can definitely like get fire res in really weird ways. Like it's kind of goofy that you can just like press a ruby flask for damage, but it's like again, I'll try to keep it up. But like you can like really get incidental free damage on a lot of stuff like this because it's just so easy to get fire res. And then 200 fire pen is just god tier. Okay, I think that's pretty much it for like all the high level stuff. I am sorry I rambled again. Sorry for me to click, but if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Like I said, I have not tested this, so you know if it's totally unfunctional, then come yell at me if anybody actually tries it. All right, poops and butts out.